people think of sculpting in miniatures, and they very frequently think of a lot of green stuff and all that kind of jazz. You mix those. Mm-hmm. But you don't have to use putty to do sculpting. You are doing things a bit differently.
Yeah, I use a touch of putty, but also, there are plenty of other crafting materials that come into play, such as the denser sheets of metal, the brass wire that can be twisted around, which comes into play. A lot of sculptors will make a skeleton or basic form out of whatever they want to make out of these metallic rods and such.
But you're making an organic thing out of metal, though.
That I am.
Yeah,
what a twist.
Yeah.
And it's just going to provide a little insight into creating scenery, hopefully. It's on a very small scale, all right? I have this opportunity to show people this technique because I'm creating this model for some one-on-one lessons that I'm doing with a student in the future. Mm-hmm. And I thought, why not just roll it out for all of the tabletop minionites? All right, so this time we're going to do things a little differently. We're not going to be painting, we're going to be building. When you're creating a project, you want to think, how can I make this unique, right? And how can I create a narrative theme? Micro details is kind of the active phrase here. And you can see in this picture here, I have sculpted a tiny sapling growing out of this troll's horn. This is a unique opportunity. I had a chance to meet with a student at Adepticon, pick out the figure together, decide on a theme. We wanted to make this kind of forest troll. He may be unaware that this sapling is growing out of his horn. It's a result from him just spending all of his time in the woods. So our particular subject matter from Fair Miniatures, we've got this Harold the Mendacious, and let's get to it. So some materials that you're going to need: a little hand drill, trusty clippers, some brass rod, an X-Acto. Nope, I left that on the floor. And some of this thick metal sheet. You can get it at craft stores. It comes in a variety of materials, aluminum, brass, etc. We're using a little bit of a thicker based metal sheet this time to create a tiny leaf, a plant. So I've got a cutting surface, a little bit of metal sheet. It all begins by drilling a tiny hole. So we'll drop our... And I've already, I made an indentation with the X-Acto. I created a pilot hole, so I know when I start applying a little bit of pressure to the drill, spinning it around, it's going to sink into that depression. We'll just slide it down like so. Now to create the skeleton of the tree, if trees could have skeletons, sculpts have skeletons, so we'll go for it. I'll just take my clipper, pinch it ever so, well, that was too gently. Grab with the clipper, twist it around like so. Put a bit of a back tilt on it, to get that sort of leaf, sapling, seed coming out of the ground look. Just like so. Pinch it off at the point where the brass rod is going straight again. Test fit it into our little horn. Decide which way we'd like the sapling to be curving. I think off to that direction is better, and it's also, I'm trying to kind of, I want the highest point on the figure to be this halberd, in short, right? I don't want this tree to come up above it, just in the essence of creating a cool silhouette for your figure. Throwing a lot of things out there, but let's just sculpt. So that looks good as far as the distance from the surface. We'll just glue it down. What about that little side sprout, though? I've got 2 copies of the figure handy, so we can get a look at our finished product as well as from the picture. But yeah, just like so. So I'll kind of cut a little accent branch coming off of it as well. So just a shorter length of the brass rod. Grab those super gripping tweezers. give it a little side bend and just a touch of the glue. So bend it ever so gently. And a snip. I'll just grab onto the end that I want to hold on to, the piece that I intend to be gluing onto the side of the tree. Touch of that glue. Let it rest in place for just a moment. All right, star fade. I had a little difficulty attaching the brass rods together, but finally it is glued in place after much deliberation. So we'll let that sit and dry. Mix up a little putty. My friends at StyleX have supplied me with this smooth putty. There are many kinds of putty. You don't need to be terribly finicky about the material being used in this because it's a very rudimentary application. We're just kind of bulking out the stalk of that tree. So we'll just press it in place like so. Left my sculpting tool in the travel pack, so I'll just use my X-Acto, and you can see I'm just kind of creating a little bit of texture. Alternatively, instead of just swiping it on, I like to, when I'm sculpting, I've got a little rock at home. I call it my texture stamp, and you can just press that into the side of the tree, or maybe even a piece of bark, right? How do I sculpt this bark-like texture? I know, I'll just press bark into the putty. So we've got our little sapling going, we'll let that dry. Actually, I'll place a tiny bud on the end. Just have one leaf unfurling itself and the other one about to burst forth. So we got our little bud. And now we'll just kind of carve out a heart shape from this piece of metal. Obviously, we're shooting a video, and this might be a little bit of a precarious situation. I don't want to cut on Uncle Adam's surface here, which is why I have a plinth from Orthober Studio, my man. We're gonna do a little cut scene because who knows? maybe I'll gash my hand open. But we'll just press into this like so and carve out a heart shape. All right, the carving of the leaf is finished, and after many surgeries, my body has been reconstructed, and we can move on to our next step. So I've got my tiny little leaf. I'm just gonna hold it in my soft, doughy finger. Use the opposite side of the X-Acto. I stress the opposite. And press down right in the middle to kind of create that leafy crease. Then, provided that blade doesn't fall, we'll be gently, you can see the motion that I'm moving my thumb and just kind of creating a sort of a downward lilt in the leaf as it's hanging off of the branch. You know, you want it to be in a very natural position. But that's all set. We'll tweeze it up. Get out the glue. And attach it like so. Just hold it in place for a moment. Yeah, this glue just never wants to behave. There we go. I'll just press it on with my fingers and just pray to Sigmar that I don't glue my body to the rest of my body. Damn it, Sigmar is not hearing my prayers today. It's probably because I'm not being loud enough. All right. Thank you, Sigmar. There it is. A little lilted leaf, and obviously you could expand this in many ways. You can create leaves and leafy substances for all kinds of bases and scenery. There's also a variety of materials. The one I used today, I chose a firmer metal sheet so it could kind of stand up to the possibility of shipping. You could use thick paper, tinfoil, a variety of substances out there. Something is malleable, carvable. It can probably be worked into something else on the miniature scale. So if you want to catch up with me online, you can find me at the Fantasy Art of Sam Lenz at facebook.com. I'm Samson Osmus on Instagram and samsonminis.blogspot.com. I've also taken my show on the road, and I am instructing all across the U.S. and outside of the U.S. through CK Studios, ckstudios.bigcartel.com. You can find where my events are listed, purchase tickets, as well as events to the other fine instructors that we have on the team. So thanks to Adam and everyone here on the Tabletop Minions team, and all of you warmongers out there for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.